We want to introduce you to Colonel James Bledsoe. He is recently retired from the U.S. Army, and we're so excited to have him with us today because we found the Colonel. We wanted to have somebody with your status.
Yeah.
He's so humble, he's going to be like, stop.
Yeah.
Like, I want to talk about this. You've been retired for how long?
2 months now.
He's a baby.
Goodness.
He's brand new. He's brand new. So with the Beauty Battalion, what we've been wanting to find out, particularly from all of those who have served, and we want to share with you, who's just like Missy and I, who haven't, we're just civilians that appreciate what you've done. When I mean, you've been, your whole career has been in the Army, and when you get these young men and women that come in for the first time, how do you help them transition from going from maybe mom and dad or college to being under your care?
Fortunately, there's a large establishment to do that. It starts out in basic training, so by the time they arrive to me, a lot of that transformation's already happened. The growing up and the maturity and the values that are instilled do so at basic training and then continue on throughout their career. But as far as me personally, I think the important thing for leaders in the military or in any organization is to lead by example. So that's what I always strive to do, is just to try to live those values and be a good leader. And that's what I did when I was younger, is I looked up to those older guys to see how they behaved and performed.
Okay. Tell us, what was your role in the Army?
My last assignment was the Director of Aviation and Safety for the Utah Army National Guard.
Okay.
And I did that for the last 5 years.
And you're a pilot?
Yes.
Okay, so you flew some of the big helicopters?
I've flown pretty much all the Army helicopters except for the CH-47 Chinook. So.
Okay.
You all know what that is. You're an Apache pilot, though, right?
Most of my career, most of my flight experience was with the AH-64 Apache.
Okay, those are such an amazing, Colonel Bledsoe took my family and I on a tour, such an amazing instrument. Tell us what the Cobra does, or the Apache, sorry.
Yeah, the Apache is the military's premier helicopter attack gunship. So it has a reconnaissance role and it has an attack role, and it provides protection and both from an offensive and defensive standpoint to our troops on the ground.
How many can fit in there at one time? Like how many people do you usually take?
The Apache is only two pilots. No room for anyone else unless they want to strap onto the wing.
Yeah.
They've done before. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
Just an emergency situation. Looking
back over your career, I know there's probably a lot of them, but what is one memory that really stands out that you'd want to share?
Tons of memories, and I go on, but the one that just comes to mind with the Utah National Guard was transforming the unit to the latest version of the Apache, which is the longbow, while I was battalion commander, and then also preparing that unit to go to war. And it was a huge undertaking. Had a great team, and flash forward, the unit went to combat in Afghanistan. It just did remarkable. Just did fantastic.
And how long does it take to get a troop ready?
It can take, it took us about 2 years, but we were also upgrading to new equipment. So it was a challenge to get everybody trained up and into the new Apache and get them ready to go. And they did very, very well.
So if I can ask you, and you don't have to answer this, what we really want to feel is what you guys have, a sense of what you've been through. When you spent so much time with men and women that have been under you and you lose them in war, how do you cope with that, and how do you continue to still be a leader?
That's a really good question, and I've experienced that throughout my career, and it's a deeply personal thing, because these soldiers that you've served with and worked with, they're like family.
Yeah.
So it's like losing a family member.
Absolutely.
So the pain never goes away. The memories never go away. So it's just a matter of keeping them in your memories and maybe staying in touch with family members. Yeah,
wow.
Absolutely.
Now that it's been 2 months since your retirement, what's life like for you adapting back to civilian lifestyle?
Change wardrobe for one.
Yeah.
new wardrobe. I can let my hair grow. I don't anyway. I don't have any to grow, but the transition is definitely a challenge for people that's been in the military for any length of time, especially for more than 20 years, because it's a part of me.
Yeah, right.
So it's interesting to.
What would you say is the hardest thing to adapt to?
The lack of structure.
I was going to say, is it like, you're just set schedule?
And just trying to figure out who's who when you go into an organization, because it's really easy in the military. When you're introduced to somebody, you can see immediately their rank and their position. In the civilian world, the big boss could be in jeans and a t-shirt, and then you can have somebody else in a suit who thinks and acts like they're in charge, but they're really not.
So you mentioned that because you have a civilian job now. Tell us about that.
I decided to, instead of continue on in a management or administrative role, to follow my passion, which is flying. So I applied for the airlines and made it through training, barely.
Of course he did.
And,
you fly commercial flights now?
I do, yeah. So
See, who would you rather?
I'm like, I want to be on his
I'm going to
plane.
call. Hello, Southwest.
I've got a
Is
special
Colonel Bledsoe
request.
flying? I want to fly with him. Totally.
Wow, well, that is very cool that you pursued your passion and continue to do that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a new chapter for you.
It is. It's really a new chapter. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. So.
Taking you back, because I do want to know this.
Yeah.
Where and at what point in your career did you decide I want to make the military my career? Was that something you thought of as a child, or did you just kind of go in and you're like, I think I'll stay? How did that happen?
I actually decided in college. So at that point, I said, I'm intrigued with the military. So I went into the officer training program, and I was really intrigued with flying. So that was my passion, or that was my dream at the time. And then got into the military in the regular Army, and did that for about 9 years before I transitioned into the National Guard full time. And it was just every couple of years I said, well, do I want to get out or do I want to stay? And there was just more positives, more reasons to stay than go. And it just kept going and going, and boom, all of a sudden, 27 years, and it quickly came to an end. So.
If you've ever seen a colonel in their full uniform, it's quite a respectful moment. First time I met Colonel Bledsoe was actually at your place out there in West Jordan, and it's interesting to see the command that just your presence brings with the other people that work there.
Well,
and he's like, yes.
He's like,
I
yes,
created that.
I am intimidating.
No, he didn't. No, but it's a different world. It is really. If you ever have a chance to be on a base or at a reserve or anything like that, it's a different world.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because, as a colonel, you have to kind of break down barriers because I remember when I was young and new, I was intimidated by the colonel. So you really have to reach out and try to break down those barriers and get people to relax and talk to you and stuff.
Yeah,
and so
get to know you on a
try
personal
not to
basis.
be intimidating.
Because he's such a nice guy that in my mind, and maybe it's from movies, I view colonels with like they yell. They yell and they're mean and they have like little timid soldiers everywhere.
Yeah, actually, that type of leadership is going
actually,
away.
yes, that's how I. That's
It's going away. That's good.
No, that's
I mean, you're going to see that in any organization, but
the
military is doing a good job with getting rid of toxic leaders. And the intimidation and the yelling and screaming has its place, maybe in a training environment to get people's attention, but you don't need to work that way on a daily basis, And especially with the organization that I've been affiliated with, people are so smart and it doesn't take much. You just need to communicate with them and boom, they've got it, they're moving out. And most of the folks are what I call, fire and forget. You give them a task and boom, it's done. And really, really a good group of people.
Real quick for our last question, unless you have another one, things that you've learned in the military that you've used throughout your life lessons.
Oh, tons of them. Just I can just go on and on, but just to highlight a few, I would say just the respect for others, the old golden rule, in terms of how to work within an organization, how to get along with people is very important in the military, and it's very important in the outside world. So that's probably the biggest thing, biggest lesson.
To
that
treat
I've
others
learned.
as you would like to be treated.
Yeah, you know, and
Yeah.
I've seen bad leaders or bad peers or bad subordinates, you know, and it's, those are probably the biggest lessons because it's...
You lose respect that way.
Right, yeah, and it's, my call sign was Coach, and that was my nickname, and you know, so I
Does
really
it look like
like
a coach to you?
organizational dynamics and,
Yeah.
and what it takes to build a good team, and so that's one thing that I've always honed on and learned from.
That's wonderful. We're so glad that you joined us today. We're so glad to introduce you to Colonel Bledsoe. I almost called you Doctor. To Coach. To Coach. If people
Bledsoe.
want to fly where you're flying, what airline do you work for?
I'm not sure if I can say it or not.
Okay.
Oh,
it's
it's
top secret.
Yeah.
Secret service.
It's military secret. Can't tell you.
You just hope and pray you're on his flight. But thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
us and sharing your
Yeah.
experience with us. And
It's
hang
been a
on
pleasure.
tight for 1 second. We've got something else coming up.